Frustratingly close to a drop, but not quite. Today I'm going to show you how I made this realistic looking leaf and manipulate it to bend with a water droplet. We're looking at lattices, hooks, a particle system, shape keys, and a realistic shader setup. So let's get started. In Blender, I'm in 3.00 normal, not the alpha. Just start, delete everything. Now we need to add a plane. Shift A, mesh, plane, and we need to scale this up to general leaf proportions. So I'm going to scale it. I found, it depends on your leaf texture, but I found for me, the one I chose, and I'll put a link in the description, 3 on the X, S, X3, and SY 4.7. So that's your general leaf shape. If you scale it in edit mode, you don't need to apply scale, but if you don't and you scale it in object mode, just Control A with it selected and go down to scale. Apply the scale. Give it a couple of loop cuts, tab into edit mode, Control R. I'm going to give it 2 along the long edge and 1 along the short edge, so that we create these squares, and that helps when dividing it. It makes it a little bit more even. Now select all the verts, A, and then right click, subdivide. I'm going to do this a bunch of times, maybe 7. Tab out of edit mode, right click, shade smooth. We're going to need that when we actually start to bend it. I'm also adding a subdivision surface modifier, so a quick way to do that, Control 2. And that adds us at level 2. If not, you can just add it here, add modifier, and then go down to subdivision surface, bump that up to 2. That's it for modeling the leaf. We just do the rest with shaders. But before we jump to that, we need to add our lattice and hooks. So Shift A, add in your lattice. So you can see this is a cube in the middle. We need to scale this to surround the original plane. SX. Might be easier if I jump to top view, pressing numpad 7. And SY. Just so it's slightly bigger than the plane itself. And then if we see it on the side view, it's too tall. SZ, and shrink that right down. So it's just around there. If you go to the object data properties, which is this lattice looking thing here, you can add your cuts to this, which separates out the vertices. I'll add a couple in this direction so that when we bend it, so we can use proportional editing to move it in a nice sloping curve. Finally, we need to add hooks. These are objects that we move to move the lattice, and we need to add them to each row of this lattice. So if I tab into edit mode on the lattice, you can now see the verts. If I go from top view and select them, numpad 7, so that's selected the first row, Control H to add a hook, hook to new object. It chucks in an empty there, and you can see that empty here. So we do that for all of the other ones. Select the verts, Control H, add hook. Next one, Control H, add hook. You can see it's adding separate empties for each hook, which will manipulate that particular row on the lattice. So there, now you can see we have 9 rows of vertices on the lattice and 9 separate empties here, 0 to 8, that we can now move, which if we tab out of edit mode, grab one of these and then press GZ, you can see it move that particular row of the lattice. If we turn on proportional editing, GZ, zoom out a little bit, then it will move the whole thing. If we change the proportional editing to sharp, you get a nicer curve. So selecting this empty, GZ, you can see it starts to slope down here nicely. That's what we're going to use to shape the leaf later. Now you need to connect the plane to the lattice. Select the plane, go to modifiers, add your lattice modifier, and then select your lattice. You only got one here. And now, when we move the empties, it doesn't just move the lattice, it will move the plane. So let's have a look. GZ. There we go. It follows it nicely. And you can even rotate these. So if I pick one at the end, rotate on the y-axis, R's Y, then you can zoom out to give it a nice gentle curve. Now we're going to position the leaf into a bent position. This is going to be our original starting point for the animation. So I grab this final lattice on the end of the leaf. It's going to be where the leaf's point is. GZ. I'm going to zoom that down. With the mouse scroll wheel you can change the size of this proportional editing. I'm going to bring that down a little bit. And I might twist slightly this last one, R on the Y. Just has a nice gentle shape, just makes it a little bit more interesting. Now we need to model some water droplets. Shift A, add a mesh. We want to add a cube this time. I'm going to just move this out of the way. GX, turn off proportional editing, GX. Over there, press the full stop to snap it to view. I'm going to subdivide this cube, tab into edit mode, right click subdivide. I'm going to scale it on the Z axis, SZ, and then bring it down a little bit. Tab out of edit mode, Control 2 to give it a subdivision surface modifier. Shade smooth. Now using proportional editing again, we need to play around with the vertices on this, just by selecting one at a time. Turn the proportional editing on to something like sphere or smooth. I'll probably use smooth. And just make it look a little bit more like a water droplet. GZ, that's GZ. I need to scroll this right down. There we go, we got a nice water droplet here. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect. I mean, this is going to be shrunken down quite a lot and be part of our particle system later. So I'm going to duplicate this so we've got two different versions of it. Click on it, Shift D. I'm going to grab that along the X-axis. Now we need to edit this one to make it look slightly different to the first. Right, that should do it. Now we've got two fairly unique looking water droplets. I'm going to add these both to their own collection because they're going to be part of the particle system. So select them both, holding Shift to click. Press M, new collection, call it particles. And there they are, cube 1 and 2. Finally, we need to add the main water droplet. This is going to be the one that runs down the leaf. For this, I'm going to use an icosphere. Shift A, mesh, icosphere. Grab that along the X-axis. Press point or full stop to zoom in. For this, I'm going to add a subsurf modifier at level 3. So rather than Control 2, Control 3 on that. Shade smooth. In fact, I'm not sure if I shade smooth on these. But there we go. Now we need to make this look like it's a proper droplet that's about to drop off the leaf. So we're going to select the top vert, jump to one of the side views, doesn't really matter which way. Press G, Z, and bring it up. So let's have a look at this. Tab out of edit mode, It looks all right. We need to flatten off one of these sides, just so that's the side that's going to be against the leaf. Tab into edit mode again, jump to the side view and grab the side vert, maybe these two. G, and then this is along the x-axis. So we flatten that out. If I scroll the wheel up a little bit more, I might just grab this one along the x-axis as well, just to flatten it out. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat because some of the mesh will actually go through the leaf. It just has to be flat enough so that looks all right. What I might do, just on this last one, change this to sharp. Just drag it up a little bit. There we go, that'll do. On all of these droplets, we need to apply the transforms, so Control A, all transforms. Now for this main droplet, we need to add a shape key. So this is going to change the shape from one version of the mesh to another. First of all, we have to add a shape key. This is our basis shape key. This is the original shape. Now we add a second shape key. This is going to be drop. And we just have to make this look like it's about to drop off the leaf. Tab into edit mode. Top vert selected, G, Z. Maybe something like that. So now when we tap out of edit mode, it will go back to original. This is the basis. But if you select this drop, you can use this value, which is 0 to 1, to change the shape so it looks like it's being stretched out. And you can animate this later, and that's what we're going to do. So now for shading. If we go back to our leaf, jump to our shading workspace, get rid of these. So for this we're going to add a new material, call it leaf. And for here, we're going to add in a texture. I got my texture from cgbookcase.com. I used Greenleaf 12. I'll put a link in the description. Just download the basic metal roughness 4K pack and that gives you all the bits that you need to make it look good. So now we need to start adding in the files that we just downloaded and put them into the shader. One way you can do this is Shift A and then add in an image texture and find it in your computer. A quicker way to do it is just to open up the folder you downloaded the image textures into and drag and drop them into this shader editor. You'll probably notice from the downloaded pack you've got a front and back. For this we only need the front, so I'm just going to drag and drop the front ones in. So I've added all the image textures. You can see here we've got lots of different ones. The base color, roughness, opacity, that's going to be the outline, and the mask to cut the leaf texture from the transparency that we want to add. A normal map, height map, and ambient occlusion. So now we need to add these into our BSDF. The easiest one to do is the roughness. Roughness goes into roughness, that's it. So going to the color, the main color of the leaf, we're going to add the base color and the ambient occlusion together. So we're going to mix them. If I use Control Shift A to do a search and just type in mix RGB. We're going to set this to multiply. Add these two in together and plug it into the base color. Right, it looks like they're around the wrong way, which is not a problem. Just move these out of the way. I'm going to Control T on this. Control T adds the mapping node and texture coordinate node. We're just going to rotate this along the Z-axis by 180 degrees, and that's it. So we need to now use this mapping node, because it's around the wrong way, to all of these different parts. Let's use the opacity map to block out this white around the edge, and just so we're left with the image of the leaf. So chuck that at the top. I'm going to add in Control Shift A, a transparent BSDF. And I'm going to add in a mix shader. So what we're doing, we're blending in transparent and the mix shader. I'll put the transparent at the top. And we're using this mask, which looks like this, as the factor to blend these two together. So the black will be transparent and the white will be the BSDF. So now it looks black, but if you go to render view mode, I'm going to switch to cycles. Now you can see the black just disappears. If you don't want to see the black, it doesn't bother me. I'm going to leave it there. But if you don't want to see the black, just go to your material properties, settings, viewport display, settings again, and then change the blend mode to alpha hashed. Now we want to add some bump, some texture to this. Go to the bump and height maps. So we combine these together within the same bump node that has a space for height and normal. Sorry, a height and normal map. So height goes to height, normal goes to normal, but you need to convert the normal with a normal map. Control-Shift-A to find it, type in normal, and then you get the normal map. Just chuck that in between. And then we can add that into the normal. That should give it this nice texture. It's a little bit too much at the moment, so I'm going to drip that strength down for both to about half. One thing I'm a little bit worried about is why the base color is not green. There we go. Just switch these two over. That's looking pretty good. One cool thing I saw somebody do is use the height map as a driver for the subsurface color. That's basically the color beneath the surface where it's slightly thinner and probably a little bit more organic. So if we have a look at the height map, it looks like this. So what we're going to do, I know it's a bit of a mess at the moment, with this height map, I'm going to add in a color ramp. I'm going to flip it around because we want the white to be the semi-transparent part. That's going to be the bit that has the more subsurface color. It doesn't matter about anything around the edge because that's all cut off by the opacity mask. So just going to crunch that down to about there and add that as the driver for the subsurface. So just plug this color ramp into your subsurface here. Plugged it into here, and add the color into your subsurface color. And now, if we have a look at the full final picture, that looks pretty good. It'll look better in cycles once we add in an HDRI. So shading the droplets, we're just going to pick one of the droplets, add in a new material, get rid of this, and just make a glass shader. Going to change this IOR to something like 1.33, roughness all the way down, it's already there. Let's have a look at this cube. There we go. So now we need to give this material to the other droplets. Our icosphere is the main droplet. Let's call that main droplet. So main droplet, hold control, cube 1, hold control, and then the last one you select is the one with the material. And then you can go to object, link, transfer data, materials, then they all share that same material. So for the scene setup, we're just going to add in a camera. Shift a camera from somewhere like here. Control Alt 0 snaps it to view. GZ, just to move it up a little bit. I don't want to see too much. I'm going to move it a bit closer. GZ, there. So with the camera set up, let's get in HDRI, go to your world settings, click on color, add an environment texture. I added a nice environment texture called Louter Waterfall from Polyhaven. If you jump into the shading workspace, and have a look from your camera view and switch to your main render engine, now you can see the HDRI in place. I'm just going to rotate this HDRI. So if you click on Object and switch it to World, this is your HDRI. Control T on this adds in the mapping node. You can just rotate along the Z axis. I like this angle, it adds a bit of the dirt in the background, so you got a bit of a contrast with the color. I'm just going to change the camera view slightly to get a little bit closer. There we go, I'm happy with that camera angle now. With the camera selected, now we need to add in a depth of field. For now, if you click depth of field and select the second empty, so not the one that's pulling the leaf down, but the one that's second row, bring down the f-stop right down to something like 0.3. It just makes it look like you've got a bit of a micro lens on there. So next we're going to add in a particle system across the top of this leaf with the water droplets, the two water droplets we've got over here. First we need to set an area where we're going to have those water droplets. So if we jump to top view, numpad 7, select the plane, turn off proportional editing, go to edit mode, and then I'm going to select from here, circle select, and just grab an area where I want the water droplets to be displayed. We're going to add that as a vertex group. So it's basically selecting these and adding each vertices into a group. So under, what's it called? Object data properties, add group, droplets, and you click assign. So now if you deselect, you can select just those vertices. It's added them all into this droplets group. Tab out of edit mode. Now add in your particle system. Particle properties, add particle system. We want hair. We want about 30. We don't want too many. Under render tab, you want to render as a collection, and we're going to pick the collection here. It's going to be our particles. One thing I forgot to do is set the origin point of each of these back to their original mesh geometry. So just select a droplet, set object, set origin, geometry. It sets the origin back to the geometry there. We do the same for this. I think I probably didn't do that there. So we just need to tweak a few things for this particle system to look any good. We're going to drop the scale right down. We're going to bump up the scale randomness. Scrolling down under instance collection, we want to pick random. We can see the water droplets aren't quite right, so they're facing the wrong way. So if we go to each droplet, tab into edit mode, select all, A, the verts, and then rotate along, it looks like it's going to be the x-axis by minus 90. Tab out of edit mode, so now they're facing the right way. Do the same with the other droplet. There we go, now they're all facing the right way. Under source, set distribution to random. And if you've got any modifiers on the leaf, which we do, we have a subsurf, use modifier stack. One extra cool thing we want to do is click advanced. That's going to add this rotation option here. So if you check that, so basically we want to randomize the rotation of these. So you have to play around with this under the orientation axis. I think mine is Z, global. I want to randomize the phase of this so that some of them, you can see them rotating. So they're basically rotated slightly on the Z axis, not all facing the same direction. Finally, we need to set this distribution to be our vertex group that we selected in the middle of the leaf. So we don't want it all over the leaves, especially not when we have some of this as transparent. Scroll down to vertex groups. We want to add in our group droplets. And now they're all just in that little area that we selected in that vertex group. This group. Let's see what that looks like in rendered view. You can play around with the seed of this, which basically just shifts from one distribution to another until you have something that looks quite good. I just want to hint that there's more than one droplet on this leaf. Now we're going to animate. First of all, we're going to animate this leaf bend. So I might, just to start with, grab this, proportional editing on, GZ, Gonna have the leaf starting like there. In your timeline, all you need to do is animate the hook. You don't need to animate the leaf because that would just be pulled along by the hook. Set your timeline to frame 1, add in a keyframe. We want it a location keyframe. I'm only going to do this 120 frames, so jump to the end frame, GZ on that hook, bring it down to about here. Location keyframe. Let's have a look what that looks like. I might give it a bit of a twist as well. So jump to the start keyframe. I'm going to change this from a location to a location rotation. Jump to the end and then rotate that. And then location rotation. So now we've got location and rotation data keyframed. So now we need to animate the main droplet. This is going to be a bit trickier. We're going to have to do this with a lot of keyframing. Grab the main droplet, where is it? Now we need to move this over to the leaf. So G, chuck it over there somewhere. The flat end is facing the wrong way, so I'm just going to rotate it on the Z. There's going to be a lot of fiddling around with it. Side view is quite handy when you want to rotate it. I'm going to scale this right down. And it doesn't matter if it overlaps slightly, it'd probably look better than if it doesn't connect properly with the leaf. Let's see what that looks like from the camera view. Still too big. Scale S, bring it right down. There, looking good. So now we need to change the focus of the camera to this droplet. Click on your camera, go to the camera properties, and then change this empty here in the focus object to your main droplet. Camera view, rendered view. So now we need to animate this going down with the leaf bend towards the end of the leaf. So this is going to be a location rotation movement. Hit add location rotation, and then jump to the end keyframe. We want this to be all the way down to the bottom of the leaf. So let's G. Okay, I'm happy with that final location, so I'm going to add in another keyframe, location rotation. So now what we want to do is make sure this happens nice and smoothly, and as you can see, it transitions from one location to another in a direct line, but we want it to follow the curve of the leaf. So that means adding keyframes in between so that we can adjust the position to map onto the leaf. So just pick a point on your keyframe where it starts to go wrong. We want that to be a little bit further up, GZ, maybe rotate it slightly, that's better. Location rotation keyframe, so it should interpolate in between quite organically, so it corrects everything in between those 2 points. It looks all right. So the next point has gone wrong here. I'm going to rotate this. I'm actually going to move this into the groove slightly of the leaf, so it looks like it's following that groove. Location keyframe. Let's go camera view, see what it looks like in between. So just edit that position, last position here. So now we want to use that shape key that we created to make it stretch a little bit more than this, so it looks like it's about to drop. So it would start to stretch from about here. Go to your verts, go to your object data properties here. You've got the drop, and you can keyframe this value. So add in a keyframe on 0. That's just basically using the basis shape. and then jump to the last keyframe, and then we want to bump that up all the way to 1 and add in another keyframe. We've got a bit of stretching here where it looks like it's stretching up rather than stretching down. So what we can do to correct that is just add a keyframe where it starts to do that. Here, location rotation, and then this last keyframe, just grab it down, Z a little bit, location rotation, it should correct it. I'm going to rotate this so it's plumb with the ground, so it looks like it's actually going straight down. G, move it across a little bit. I, location rotation, that basically updates the keyframe. So now it looks like it's stretching down. Might rotate this one a little bit as well. And that's it. Now for rendering, I rendered this as a PNG sequence. It's 120 frames long, so I rendered it as a PNG sequence, and then when I came to rendering it as an animation, I wanted it to run through all of the 120 frames and then run backwards from frame 120 to frame 1. To do that, you just double up your frame duration, so it's 120 at the moment, so we change that to 240, and then you go to video sequencer, you add in your image strip, your image sequence from frame 1 to frame 120. So you add them in from frame 1 to 120, A to select all, add image strip, and then jump into the final frame, then you re-add those same images back in, but in the reverse order. So go to add image sequence, and then flip them round by clicking this name, it just reorders them, and that changes the order in which they're added into the image sequence. And you've got from frame 1 to 120, and then from frame 120 to 1. And then you just change the output of this to whatever you want. I used API JPEG. Whack that right up. Render animation.